remember we said yesterday, don't try to put in what God left out. Instead, try to draw out what God put in, because that's hard enough. So as we get back together here, here we go, we're coming on in. There we go, yeah, I see them out there. Okay, so let's do this. We're going to do something here as we kind of get back together here. And this is kind of a strengths version of Simon Says. Okay, are you ready? It's a stand up if. Okay? Stand up if you almost always talk to people in airports, checkout lines, no matter where you are, you're talking to people wherever you are. Stand up if you do that. Okay, good to know. Yes, you all sit next to me on the airplane. Okay, so how about this one? If you almost always hang the shirts in your closet according to color. Yeah, all right, there we go. Sleeve length. Yeah, patterns, you know. Yeah. Oh, and what happens if somebody decides to put your clothes away for you? They don't know. Yeah, no. Yeah, and you just kind of sneak back in and rearrange it because it's got to be done right? Okay, how about this? If you almost always make a list of things to do and stick to it. You've got a list of things to do. You're a list maker, okay? How about this on weekends? Especially on weekends, I know, right? How about on vacation? Okay, we need to talk here. Oh yeah, there we go. All right, yeah, the clipboard of fun. So let's talk about you list makers out there. What do you do when you do something that's on your list? What do you do? Why do you do that? Good, yeah. I know. Mark's even thinking about checking things off. He's getting excited, right? Checking, right? What happens if you doing something during the day that's not on your list? What do you do? Out of the list and yeah, because it doesn't count, does it? It's off the list, right? Yeah. Check that. Yeah. What happens? So let's just say you've got 25 things on your list. You get 24 of them done. What happens to thing number 25? Goes on the next day's list, right? Where? At the top, because you got to finish yesterday first. Okay. So let's go a little bit deeper here. You've got 25 things on your list. You only get 24 of them done. How's that feel? Awful. Yeah, that means they didn't have a whole lot of interruptions, right? Yeah, But some of you are thinking, it doesn't feel good, not complete, feels awful. I was doing this with a group of high school students, and one girl said, that describes my mom. She's got these lists, and if she comes to the end of the day and there's one thing left on her list that she doesn't get done, you know what she says? I didn't get anything done today. Yeah, right? Because it's incomplete. The list isn't finished. You have to do something each and every day to feel good, right? Even on vacation, sat by the pool, cross it off the list. Yeah, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's kind of that getting those things done. How about this one? If you almost always seek a familiar face at a big party. Look around, scanning, looking for somebody I know. Yeah. Okay, go ahead and sit down. How about this one? If you almost always need to pick somebody to race while driving. At an appropriate rate of speed, right? I think about you all with that Progressive commercial. Come on, bro! Whoa! Let's go! Don't mess with my discount, right? Yeah. Okay. How about this? If you almost always figure out the plot of the movie before anybody else does. Okay. Now, do you tell them? Yeah. Well, yeah. How do they know? Right. I bet I know what's going on here. Let's check this out. Right. If you're almost always pushing the elevator button to remind it that you are there. Yeah. And what happens if if the elevator button has already been pushed when you come up to the elevator? You push it anyway, right? Because it doesn't count, right? The elevator will know when I have pushed the button, and it will come for me, right? Or, hey, you all didn't do this right. You see, this is how you're supposed to do it over and over again, right? Yeah. And we do that, even though we know the elevator comes in inverse proportion to the amount of times you push the button. Yeah. These are the ways that you're wired. Now, I usually have a couple of reactions when we do something like this. You know, some people say, wow, I'm standing up. I thought everybody did this. Or, you mean other people do this too? Yeah. These are talents, right? We all have instinctive ways of behaving. And these are clues to talent, right? They're the way that we're wired. Even though there are times that we laugh at these behaviors, with intention they make us successful, right? Some of these things you cannot not do. Those of you who make lists, particularly stood up for the whole thing of the lists, have you ever had a day where you didn't make a list? How long did that last? Not long, right? I found, again, just from generally 45 minutes to maybe half a day. But then you got to make a list. Or, oh, I get to make a list and you feel better again, right? You see, you have a list. That helps you be productive. That helps you get things done. Check things off my list, right? And that organizing your closet, right? It just isn't right unless it's organized, right? You've got to have things here. Okay, white shirts are here, blues here, pastels here. Then we have stripes, we have checks, we have casual suits are over here, pants here, shirts on this side. Yeah, and all is right with the world. That sense of being organized and having that done, that helps you be successful. The impatience of pushing the elevator button, the needing to race people. When you productively apply these natural ways of thinking, feeling, behaving, this is how you will be successful at whatever it is you want to be successful at. These are your talents. These are clues to talents, the ways that we do things. Now here's the thing too. Not everybody stood up for everything, right? Everyone is different and can contribute in different ways. And that's what we need to look for. And that's how you build strong organizations. That's how you build effective congregations, is helping people discover what it is that how they're wired, and then getting them connected with ministries that will help build up the body of Christ. Yeah. So, what about weakness? Let's think about weakness. Well, first of all, because again, I want to just spend a little bit of time, not a whole ton of time here, but just get some clarification. Going back to our brother Paul here. Because a lot of times we come up with this verse, right? From 2 Corinthians. My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Paul is talking about his experience and what God has said to him when he asked for the thorn in his flesh to be removed. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses so that Christ's power may rest on me. So I think it's really important for us to understand and really kind of think about, what does Paul mean by weakness here? He's not really talking about those things that he doesn't do well, which is kind of what we think about, a weakness. He tells us what it is, because he comes up a little bit later in 10, this is why for Christ's sake I delight in weaknesses. So here we have kind of what he's thinking about with weaknesses, in insults and hardships and persecutions and difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong. He's talking about the physical weaknesses. A lot of when he's talking about weaknesses is physical weaknesses. It's exhaustion. It's all of those things that kind of take things out when we feel weak. He's also talking about the psychological weaknesses that he has too. Those areas where he doesn't feel that sense of confidence. Now, if you've read to Paul, which you all have, you know that lack of confidence is not something Paul feels very often. Right? You know, that's just kind of Paul, which is okay. I'm glad he was. But even so, that's what he's talking about here, is when you feel weak, when you feel tired. Precious Lord, take my hand. I am weak, I am tired, I am worn. That's primarily what Paul is thinking about with weaknesses. And so when we think about those kinds of things, that's when we can lean into the strength that God gives us. I don't know how I got that done. I just know that God was with me. So that's what we think about when we're thinking about weaknesses and how that fits into it. So to get our heads wrapped around that a little bit about weaknesses and and how we deal with weaknesses, What I'd like you to do is take out your Clifton Strengths, your 34, your Clifton Strengths 34 report. And you can, what I'd like you to do is you can start out and take a look at page 1, because that gives you kind of the synthesis of things here. But you can also turn, and what we'll also do too is as we turn to page 25, which gives you kind of your list, your theme sequence report is on page 23, 23, 24, and 25, which is your list, your full 34, in order with the brief theme descriptions there, okay? Because we're going to refer to both of those. And if you take a look at this top one, you can see here you've got your top 10. Your signature themes are highlighted in bold on this, okay? Your signature themes are here highlighted in bold. They're bolded here, your top 5. But then you have your 6 through 10. And we would say that your 10 themes are dominant. I mentioned this a little bit yesterday. There is not much space from a statistical standpoint, from a research standpoint, between 1 and 10. They're pretty tightly packed together. So your top 10 show up for you. But when we talk about your dominant talents, most people look at this, your dominant talents, and looking at this top, and a lot of times they will pull in 11, maybe 12 in there, sometimes 13, to look at what is dominant. So 10 is typically dominant, but you may go down a little bit farther than that. And how you can do that and figure out start thinking about what is dominant for you. What I'd like you to do is turn to page 23. Okay, as you turn to 23, read those descriptions, and you say, so like number 1, ideation, read that, always me, futuristic, always me, always me, always me, strategic, that's always me, always me. And when you start making the turn from always me to sometimes me, draw a line. Draw a line there, either on page 1 or on page 23. So go ahead and take a look at that. And which ones from your 10, which you might draw the line right at 10, or you may kind of pull 1 or 2 of those other ones in there. And if you want to draw your line at like 23 or 24, we need to talk. And if you have self-assurance high, you may be tempted to do that because you think you have everything. You don't. Not everybody's everything. I can say that because I have self-assurance dominant. So, but it helps to kind of be, brutally honest with yourself there. And you may need some help with that too. So I took a look at mine. So I got ideation, futuristic, maximizes, strategic, and command. Then I have relator, intellection, belief, self-assurance, and connectedness are my top 10. Then I have activator, which I claim is dominant for me because I'm always ready to go and let's just get going. And 12 is individualization. Number 13 for me is input. And I was struggling with that because I was thinking, I have a whole lot of useless information up there. I like collecting things, collecting ideas. I never want to delete an email because who knows, you might need it someday. All kinds of input things. So I asked my friend Kurt, I said, Kurt, I'm kind of struggling with this. I might be tempted to do this. What do you think? And he said, well, Al, let's think about our friend and colleague Stephen, who has input number 1. I'm thinking, okay, I don't have it that way because, his input is he's always thinking about, he's an input activator. And so it's like, he's always got an article to share with you, all these kinds of things to be helpful. I got to activate. No. So that's where I drew the line. So sometimes you may need to have a conversation. So those tops, so your top maybe 10, 12, maybe 13, sometimes down to 14 or so, but those are your dominant talents. Those are those are the always me, they're always there. And when you're doing things, activities that call upon your dominant talents, it does not feel like work. It's energizing, it feels good, you could do it all day long. It just really is, it really kind of draws upon the best of who you are. Where you drew the line, and down below that are your supporting talents. Your supporting talents are kind of in the middle there. Those are the sometimes me. So now what I'd like you to do is go to the bottom of your list, either on page 1 or on page 25, and work your way up. And as you read each one, say, okay, rarely me, rarely me, rarely me. I'm kind of working my way up here, rarely me. And when you turn from rarely me to sometimes me, draw that line. Most people draw that line anywhere between around 30. I draw mine right between adaptability and includer. Yes?
What if when you go through the list, you get to one, what do we say, coming down from the top, sometimes three, but then you see one past that, that's kind of like, oh, that's always one.
That's kind of that, it isn't a hard and fast line, it kind of is kind of that netherworld line. So I would draw it kind of up a little bit farther where you get that, and then you may have one that's always me that kind of pops in there. I would say, so for example, a ranger, yeah, I think a ranger is me more, a ranger is me more of the time than input is, but it's still kind of down there. It's not kind of, I'm not all the time thinking about arranging, but yeah, it's pretty strong. So it's kind of, it isn't hard and fast, big split, it kind of fades. So there's kind of some fading in it that goes. So when you take a look at your bottom 5, take a look at those bottom ones. We're going to come back to that in a moment. So mine are, so as I take a look at those, yeah, number 34, restorative. Yeah, that's not who I am. Restorative, harmony, yeah. Sometimes I don't know that people aren't getting along. It just kind of is oblivious to me, and it's not really the point. Consistency, yeah, with individualization high, consistency is kind of low. I'm not surprised. Context, discipline, yeah, woo, communication, adaptability, yeah, that's not who I am. Now, now you also notice too, I said, rarely me, not never me. Because you have talents in all 34 themes. You just don't have very many down there. A theme is a group of talents. And you don't have very many. It doesn't mean you can't do it. It means if you had to do it for more than an hour, you'd rather be poked in the eye with a sharp stick. It's painful. That's why they call it a job when you have to do stuff that's down there. It's work. It's hard. Whereas your dominant talents, this is fun. This is great. I love it. Your supporting talents, not bad. I'm okay with it. Doesn't really particularly excite me, but I'm okay with it. I'll be glad when I can start doing stuff I really like, but I'm okay doing this. And your lesser talents is I hope I don't have to do this very often. Now, let's ask this. Are your bottom talents, those lesser talents down here, are those weaknesses? Maybe, maybe not. How many of you look at those in your bottom ones and say, that's not a problem. I know that's not who I am, and it's never gotten in my way. That's not a weakness. If it isn't in your way, it's not a weakness. But if you look at that, is there any one of those down there that you're concerned about? Say, ooh, that concerns me. I take a look at mine. I have discipline, lesser talents. That concerns me. We're going to talk about that. Hang on to that thought because we're going to come back to that in a moment, thinking about one of your themes, your bottom themes, that might be a weakness. You're saying, ooh, that could be a problem that I've got this down low. By the same token, if you look at your dominant talents, can those be a weakness? Yeah, do you have one of your top 5 talents that if you look at one of your top 5 talents, that would get you into trouble if you used it all the time? Yeah, that's where self-regulation comes into play. There's self-awareness, there's self-expression, there's self-regulation. So let's do this. I would like you to take a look at your list. You can go on page 1. That might work real well. And just take a look at that one of those. So when we identify weakness, and that's why your top 5 can be weakness. Most of the time we identify weakness, and people say a weakness is, first thing that usually comes to mind is something I don't do very well. That's not a very helpful definition of weakness. Okay, it's not a very helpful definition of weakness. Because a weakness, we would say we need to narrow that definition. A weakness is something that gets in your way or the way of others. And it isn't necessarily something you don't do well. So for example, I don't play the violin well. As a matter of fact, I don't play at all, but it's not a weakness. Because number 1, it doesn't get in my way. I don't try to play. Number 2, it doesn't get in anybody else's way because I'm not a member of the symphony orchestra. If I was, that would be a weakness. I'd have to figure out something to do about that. But since it doesn't get in my way or the way of others, it's not a weakness, right? If it's not getting in anybody's way, I just don't do it. So that narrows the definition of weakness. But what we would say is with your weaknesses, the things that are getting in your way or the way of others, from our definition from a strengths perspective of weakness, manage, don't fix. You manage it, don't try to fix it. And here's the thing, you will not be successful by trying to turn your weaknesses into strengths. You want to focus on your greatest talents. People seldom discover their best opportunities for growth and success in their areas of weakness. You want to manage them so they don't get in the way. What I mean by manage is sometimes you need to do just enough so it doesn't get in the way. One of my favorite stories around this comes from a story that's told about Tiger Woods when he was first burst on the scene. And what they noticed about Tiger Woods in studying his practice habits is he didn't spend a whole lot of time on his technique for getting out of sand traps. So they asked him about it. Some reporters asked him about it. Says, "We notice you're not doing this." And he says, "Well, I don't plan to be here very often." That's kind of typical Tiger Woods arrogance. But he said, no, let me explain. He says, "Look, I find I'm going to be more successful if I just focus on what I do best and getting better at that, hitting the ball long and straight off the tees, and then working on my short game, getting onto the green, and then I'll work on my putting. So I'm not going to be the tour expert in sand traps. But I want to know just enough so on those occasions when I do miss at the ball, I can get out." That's managing weakness so it doesn't get in the way. It's not becoming an expert in it, it's managing it. So you want to manage it so it doesn't get in the way. And that's when we talk about managing weakness. So how you manage your weaknesses? Well, first of all, define it as in a helpful way. It's something that gets in your way or the way of others. Is there something that you're currently getting in your way? And if there's some things you're not very good at, that isn't a weakness. If it's not getting in the way, that's fine. But if it is, you got to do something about it. So if there's something getting in your way, here are 7 strategies for managing a weakness. First of all, open dialogue and transparency. Just kind of own up to it, right? And having that dialogue with yourself. Hey, I'm not very good at this. And that's okay most of the time. But also, too, with some others around us and finding out and having the conversation. Second, leverage other talents. Can I do this differently? Is there a way that I can do this differently? So, for example, let's take a look at mine. I would say discipline. So I look down there at discipline. It's okay. First of all, I would say, what is it about discipline? Why is it at the bottom, and why could that be a problem? And that is because I have to be organized. I've got to be organized. My recurring nightmare, because I travel 80% of the time, is waking up in the wrong city in the wrong day with the wrong client going to the wrong place. And I still wake up in the middle of the night, am I in the right place? Wait a minute, what do I have to do tomorrow? Oh my gosh, I still have those. So I've got to be organized to manage that because I don't want to show up in the wrong place at the wrong time. So I leverage other talents instead. When I leverage my maximizer and my strategic, that looks a lot like the organizational aspects of discipline. So first of all, what are the behaviors? What are the behaviors that you look at and say, I need those if I'm going to be successful? So the behaviors are organization and time management. Okay, what do I have? What are my other talents that I can leverage? Well, I can leverage my maximizer, which is about finding the best way to do things. I can leverage my strategic. How many of you have strategic high? Okay, how many backup plans do you have? Yeah, just saying, right? That's a pretty safe question to ask because one is never enough, right? So you've got a plan and you see the best way forward. So when I put those together, I can be really organized. And then I just leverage my command. Command is just do it already. So I do, and so I just kind of leverage those, and that helps me to be organized. I'm organized. I have routines, and when I find that I don't follow my routines is when I get into trouble. So I do all of those kinds of things, leveraging my other talents to emulate the behaviors of the theme that's down below for me. So that's leveraging other talents. 3, use support systems. Support systems is a process, a strategy, a tool. My life changed organizationally when I discovered Outlook about 20 years ago. Yeah, I had tried a Palm Pilot back in the 90s. It just was kind of clunky, didn't quite work right, but man, Microsoft Outlook is my new best friend at work. If it's in Outlook, it gets done. It's not that I procrastinate. I'm too old to procrastinate anymore. I can't get away with it. But I've got everything goes in Outlook. And with my futuristic, I'm constantly checking Outlook 3, 6, 9 months a year out, so I can kind of plan my time and get my whole year put together. So I kind of know these things, so I get it into Outlook, and I get the reminders, and some things I will set, I'll ping myself 2 weeks in advance. Other times there'll be kind of that reminder, so I set those reminders. And I make notes in the Outlook. So for this event, I have all the notes from everything in there, so I can pull it up when I need to. Outlook helps me be organized. That is a support system. Support systems can be helpful. Second, set reasonable expectations and then just do it, right? I'm never going to, when we back years and years ago, Gallup did things and helped everybody, sent everybody to Franklin Covey School, and got all the daily planners back in the day when everything was written down. The people who did the best at this and loved it the most? People who were organized in the first place. Because you're giving them another way to be organized, right? So sometimes you just got to kind of do what you can. I'm never going to be as detailed and have the color-coded spreadsheets that my daughter has. I'm just not going to have that. But I've got to set reasonable expectations to make sure that I get where I need to be on time and do what I need to do. Get the right training, because sometimes, when I mentioned yesterday that time management one-day course that I took, that wasn't really very helpful, right? But I learned best on my own, so I'll go in and I'll find some things on Outlook and how to maximize that and figure some of those things out to help me do that and find my own strategies. What is the best way to do that? Number 6 is probably your best way. Complementary partnerships. And I don't mean people who compliment you and tell you how wonderful you are. No. I mean compliment you. Those people who have talents where you don't. My administrative partner, my administrative assistant, my colleague Sherry, she puts everything in Outlook for me. She doesn't have discipline high, but she loves to check things off her list. And I'm on her list most of the time. But so she handles. So one of the things. So putting this together, I will make my own travel arrangements and get everything booked, and then TNT, our travel agency, will send the email. Will automatically go to Sherry, and she will cut and paste all the items in my itinerary and put them in Outlook for me. And so when I get off the plane, I know when to pick up the rental car, I know what hotel I'm going to, I know where I'm supposed to be, and all of those things get in. I know where my flights are, and it's all in Outlook for me because she puts that together for me. And she keeps on top. One of her jobs, I say, is just ping me and remind me of things. Stay on me until you get the answer you need. Because that's your role is to bug me. Which she likes to do. But anyway, so that partnership, finding complementary partners. Who are people? Because complementary partners, traditional math, 1 + 1 = 2. Complementary partners, 1 + 1 = 10. And how can you be more effective? That's one of the best ways to manage that. And if all else fails, sometimes you need to adjust or change the role. We'll talk about that a little bit more. Talk about that a little bit more tonight. But particularly in ministry, and I think about this in terms of pastoral ministry, sometimes we feel we have to do everything, because after all, that's what it means, right? But for everything that you're not good at or don't like to do, at least 10 people in your congregation who would love to do it and be better at it. Yeah, so adjust the role. Give away the things that you're not the best at that other people can do. And then it'll get done so much better, and you'll be helping develop people. All of those kinds of things. Yeah. So these are 7 strategies for managing a weakness. So another one too, thinking about leveraging other talents. What we want to do is think about talent balancing, because we mentioned a little bit of yes. Question.
You're talking about the managing weaknesses, and compensating with the complementary relationships. How would you apply that to the area of influence?
Oh, when you're looking at influencing talents? Okay, hang on to that thought because we'll get to that in a moment this afternoon, because we're going to look at the 4 domains after lunch. Okay, so hang on to that. Yeah, because that is a very, very common question about influencing talents. Okay, so we'll talk about that in a moment. And not in a moment, but after lunch. So y'all come back. Okay, so talent balancing. So what I'd like to do is you're going to find a partner, but what you're going to do first is circle which one of your top 5 talents that you sometimes use too much. Which one can get you into trouble? Okay, so take a look at that. Okay, so take 60 seconds and circle the one that gets you into trouble.